Welcome back to another episode of Root Notes. David, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. We are on the other side of that big weekend we were talking about on the podcast last time. So how'd it go for you? You did a couple of things.
Yeah, it was great. We had a couple of events Friday and Saturday. One of those events on Friday was the food bank in Durham, where we packed several hundred pounds of peppers, jalapenos, and that sort of thing into these 5-pound bags, and it was awesome. We had 20 students in the morning, 20 in the afternoon. So it was a really good event, good mix of
shout out
students
to
and professions.
Eastern North Carolina, right?
That's right. Yeah. Central and Eastern North Carolina.
Oh, that's right. Central Eastern. If people don't understand, like people use food bank and food pantry interchangeably, but a food pantry is that thing that happens in your local neighborhood where it's open and food is distributed. Food banks are these massive operations. It's like a distribution
warehouse
center.
Yeah, literally. They had trucks coming in. They were offloading things with forklifts. We asked several times, could we drive the forklift? They told us no. And that was probably the right call.
Very wise.
Yeah, but I will tell you this. Remind me at the end of the episode to tell you why you should wear rubber gloves when you are packing several hundred pounds of peppers.
All right, listeners, come up with your answer why, and then we'll see at the end of the episode why Wes says you should wear rubber gloves. And then, so that was Friday, and then Saturday you were with a whole bunch of other volunteers.
Yeah, at the Miracle League baseball in Cary, where it was so much fun, and I was exhausted.
I have never done that. I really want to do that.
You should do that. It's such a very cool organization. It's kids and young adults with developmental and intellectual disabilities, and they're playing baseball, and everybody is paired with a volunteer, and it is the most fun. The crowd is into it. They've got walk-up music. I mean, it is
my gosh,
fantastic. And the training was great. Like, everything about it was just well done. But for 3 hours, I ran around the bases with the kid I was paired with, and man, I was wiped out at the end. So, what about you, man? Mine went great. What happened with you?
Well, okay, so there's two stories to be told here. One, it went great. I mean, it went
great,
beautifully. Well, in fact, it literally brought tears to my eye how well it went. And yet, you remember I was saying I was like staying up all night working on plans for that?
Yeah.
So let me tell you, brother and listeners, this weekend, particularly Friday, was quite an experience of just realizing that some days, you know how Mama said there'd be days like this? Some days, even if you're really good at your job, you could be very bad at your job. And I was not great at my job on Friday. The event was still spectacularly good, but it was all in spite of me. And the reason is actually connected to a bunch of stuff that we talked about on this podcast that I forgot to remember when I was doing the work, which is this whole issue of complexity. Because I was staying up all those nights trying to engineer chaos out of the event. And guess what is undefeated?
Chaos.
Chaos. And it went so well. It was like the schools were amazing. The kids were amazing. The volunteers were all kinds of amazing. My colleagues could not have been more spectacular. And it's a good thing. You know what? I was talking to somebody about it, and I was saying, it's kind of like if you're the head coach and you realize in the first quarter that your game plan is trash, but somehow you win the game because the players just make amazing plays all the whole way through. That was my experience. I'm like, I am so proud of you. I am not proud of me right now.
That's hilarious. Your victory speech was an apology. That's funny.
I swear to you, I literally sent that email to 266 people. It said, this was amazing. thank you for being better than the plan was. I literally sent that email to 266 amazing volunteers.
So just back up just for a second for folks who maybe don't remember or maybe didn't listen to the last podcast. What was the event?
Yeah. So let me give you a picture of what we were trying to do. And what we did, which was many schools in our school district came to our building, the building where we typically have classes and OSCEs and simulations and all the stuff that happens in our health science building. We cleared it out. We didn't have one single class. We didn't have anything going on in that building except for these really special young people. These were children with intellectual disabilities. And this was sort of sponsored by Special Olympics North Carolina and Hardin County Special Olympics. And it's something that we've done versions of for years now. But this was going to be the most massive event we'd ever tried to do by quite a bit. It was about 4 times bigger than anything else we had done. So going into it, we're going to have volunteers taking kids off of buses and then taking them through 4 different floors of our building of activities. And every 45 minutes, we would have a new bus unload, come into the first floor. The first floor moves to the second floor, bump, bump, bump. We would have multiple different patterns of rotation on each floor so that we could absolutely maximize the amount of time that kids were engaged in cool activities and as little waiting as possible. That was the task, my friends. And just to give you a sense of what I mean by it was spectacular, let me tell you this story before we get into how I didn't do so well. There was a kid, a high school student, who was on one of these buses. And the teacher met me at getting off the bus and said, hey, look, this kid's probably not going to get off the bus. So his mom and dad followed us. So they're going to park right over here so that they can take him back home if he doesn't get off the bus. He never gets off the bus for field trips. In fact, he doesn't get out of the car a lot of times when his mom and dad take him places. He's just that overwhelmed by it. And I said, no problem, no problem. If they need to take him, no problem at all. Well, the kid did get off the bus and got matched up with an amazing one of our students who is a volunteer, went through the day. And so these parents that had followed the school bus so that they could be there to take their kid home, instead were out behind Smith Hall, out behind our building. The mom was in tears. She could not believe what was happening. This kid did every level of activity. And the father said, this is the boy we've been wanting to see.
Oh, gosh.
That's what I'm telling you, man. When I say it was spectacular, it was spectacular. Then this was unsolicited feedback and email that I got this weekend, just explaining this story and how important it was. And so many things like that. But let me tell you, that thing I described, it was complicated.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And it took about 1 hour into this all-day event for me to realize that the schedule that I had worked on was trash, which is bad in 2 ways. One, all the work that I put into this, I realized in this moment, it's not going to work out like you thought it was. Secondly, I'm at hour 1 and I've got all the day in front of me. And I realized the plan I had was no good. And the plan that I had created that I did have that was no good took many, many days to create. It was really hard to come up with. And now in the moment, I got to figure out what a better plan is. And not only that, to try to communicate it to literally hundreds of people. That was not a happy place to be, man.
I'm glad I was playing with peppers at the food bank.
I literally, in that moment, I was like, Wes Rich is stuffing food into boxes. God love everybody doing that, but there's a difference in complexity that cannot be overstated here. Get your butt back down here. Help me figure out how to fix this. But you know what it was? It goes back to stuff that we've been talking about. Like, what is, like, you've been in my office, written on the walls in my office like a crazy man.
Yes.
Are some phrases. And one of them is stop with linear thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Reject all the linear thinking. And what I did when I was faced with a very complicated problem was have the hubris and the foolishness to think that I could out-engineer something that was really, really complex. Instead of building, so like basically all it took for the wheels to fall off of this thing is I get a text from a school that says, hey, by the way, we're on our way as soon as we can, but the wheelchair lift for our bus is broken. We can't switch to another bus because we need the wheelchair lift. So we're waiting on somebody from the garage to come fix the wheelchair lift. We'll keep you updated.
Oh,
now, what I had engineered
was a 45-minute rotation
that needed to work. But you know what this event was not? It was not a machine. And I should have never pretended it was. But you know what I had in my head, man?
I don't know what's in your head, brother. And I'm scared to find out.
Yeah. I made the mistake of allowing myself late at night. And I'm talking, like, I didn't do like a week of late nights on this. The first all-nighter that I pulled, it wasn't technically on. I went home at 4 a.m. from the office.
That's
the
all
first
night
time I
enough.
did that was 4 weeks ago planning this thing. Like when I say, like, that's the kind of hours that I was putting in to just trying to figure out how the schools could get there. Cause you got to figure out like the distance from our campus to the school to figure out like who can get here when, like mapping all that out. But in my mind, I had in mind, you know, Chick-fil-A drive-thrus. Now stop. Don't get ahead of me here. Like,
Okay.
What do you think about when you think about Chick-fil-A? They're almost legendary for this. Like, whatever you think about Chick-fil-A, what do you know about a Chick-fil-A drive-thru?
That I'm definitely going to get a peach milkshake if they're available. That's what's going to happen. No. So I made this comment to someone recently. I was like, look, there are a lot of places, like you don't wait in line, right? Like you're one of those folks that like, if there's a line for the restaurant.
Oh, me? Yeah. No, I'm out.
You're
out.
done. Like, no, I'm not going to wait 30 minutes, not going to wait an hour, you know. And so you see drive-thrus wrapped around. You're like, oh, no, I'm not going to do that.
That's
Chick-fil-A is the exception to that, though,
Yeah.
because you can see a parking lot full of cars.
It's just winding around and around and around.
And
you're
you
like,
still, you're like, we're going to be in and out. And you are.
Fries in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You're going to be in and out quickly, and they're going to tell you it was their pleasure. That's the other thing that's going to happen.
That's right. All right. So I have in mind, all right, Chick-fil-A can do like 100 cars in a drive-thru between 12 and 1 p.m. I can handle a couple hundred kids showing up over a 4 or 5 hour period. We can do this. We can engineer this. And I was just so wrong, man. I'm right a lot. And I was just so profoundly and thoroughly wrong. Why was I wrong, Wes?
Well, a lot of reasons.
You should be enjoying this, by the way.
It's pretty funny to me, honestly. For one thing, this is not what you normally do. You are not normally in charge of logistics. So let's start there.
Okay, fair enough. But that's why I was spending all these late nights, because I was like, I know this is not necessarily like what I'm doing, 10,000 hours,
right.
like all that deal. But I'd put in the hours to make sure I could overcome that with like a good plan. That's not really it. Keep going.
So your plan relied on everything working perfectly, right? That's one of the problems. But
so
the bigger
Chick-fil-A.
problem. Yeah, well, you're not Chick-fil-A. Let's be clear on that.
So follow that.
You're not Chick-fil-A?
What was different about what we were trying to do in Chick-fil-A? Let's start with personnel.
Personnel, and then simplicity of what they're doing. They're giving you something they have prepared. They can control a lot of the variables. You couldn't control any of the variables that were leading to the timing of this. You were relying on something completely outside of your control.
Right. 90% of the people that pull up to that drive-thru are going to say some version of the very same thing. It's going to be tweaking basically the same request. Like there's just a limited set of things that you might pick from.
Right.
And by the way, they all knew, everybody working at Chick-fil-A knew those items, and they were trained on these things for over and over when they were training with people, when they were new, the rest of the people weren't new.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So we had 266 volunteers, some of them, and they were amazing. Can I stress this? They were amazing. But what part of the complexity that I did not give myself like enough credit for, like, okay, but this is different, David. Like Chick-fil-A can engineer this, but all of their employees didn't show up on that day going like, tell us where to go.
Yeah.
Tell us where to be.
So that'd be a great experiment, right? The volunteer Chick-fil-A.
Right, the volunteer Chick-fil-A. Not only it's like Chick-fil-A ain't running 266 people either. They've got to coordinate a staff that is probably a whole like factor of 10 lower than that, right?
Sure.
So they're managing a smaller group. Their training is real different than these volunteers showing. I mean, some of the volunteers had never been to our building. They were going to take kids through the building, through all these things. That's one of the reasons I spent so much time. I color-coded individualized schedules for the children. There were 4 different forms of schedule that were all had a different color-coded thing. Why? Because I knew I was going to have volunteers that had never been in the building before. So the color matched a set of balloons that was outside of the door. So you could just look at blue and then look for blue balloons and walk in that direction. Now think about how efficient Chick-fil-A would be if many, if not most of the people that arrived at the Chick-fil-A had never been to a Chick-fil-A before, had never been in the building, and they're going to run it for the day. That was the situation.
So you thought you were going to have Chick-fil-A, but what you really did was you were on Chopped. That's what you were.
Yeah, so I actually do catch this reference, but I don't know if everybody will. So why don't you explain that?
No, yeah. Chopped is where folks show up to a cooking show. They may be on a small team, but they have no idea what they're going to be making, what they're going to be making it with. It's the most random assortment of things in a place you've never been before. You're given a task and a time and to meet this task and say, go. So you basically played that game with this day. Is what happened.
And that's it. And so it was more like Chopped. If Chopped, instead of having like 3 contestants, had 266 people that were trying to coordinate a kitchen. Oh my goodness, man. And then on top of it, do you know how easy, and God love these kids. They made my day. I can't tell you the number of faculty, like our colleagues and staff and our students, health science students, who have emailed me and said, I can't even tell you. I haven't stopped thinking about that day. That day was so inspiring. Those kids inspired me. Those teachers inspired me. It was amazing. But can I tell you, brother, I have a son with Fragile X syndrome. I worked in disability before he was ever born for like a decade. This is not my first rodeo. Why was I so dumb? Chick-fil-A is not the model for what's about to happen that day.
No,
Chick-fil-A,
not at all.
All the cars go in the same stinking direction. There is so much predictability in what those customers are going to do. Do you know what's not true at all about one single classroom of kids who have special needs? Predictability. Their needs are so different. You got kids who are overstimulated. There are kids who are just being the show. They can't get enough attention. Like all of this is happening. You got kids literally running, just like escaping, like woof, gone. That's nothing like Chick-fil-A. If that happened at Chick-fil-A, if every now and then one of the cars just took off, something tells me they wouldn't have the same reputation for efficiency. You know what I mean?
So back to something you have said more than one time when we're working with organizations or groups we're facilitating, and you'll share with them, say, look, my son Miles has Fragile X. And that means that when we make plans, those plans very often change. Like if we get tickets to something, we may not be able to stay for the whole thing. We may not get to go at all. We may get to go and have the entire experience. And so what you tell them is, I I end up living in the moment a lot.
Yes.
And you knew that going into this.
That's why I was bad at my job, man. I was bad at my job because it wasn't as efficient as a Chick-fil-A. I was bad at my job because I knew better. I knew better than to try to create a clockwork engineering solution to the chaos that was going to make this all run. I knew better than to think every special education classroom was going to get on the bus and get to Campbell within a 10-minute window of their start time. What? Who thinks that? I shouldn't think that. Of all the people on planet Earth, I should have known better. I should have known that this was not going to be routinized. Routines, like clear scripting of what was about to happen. I don't care if you color code it or not, brother. It was not the way to go. What I should have done, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, is create plans that are robust to uncertainty. Create a plan where if buses are late, this is how we're going to flex. If kids need more time in a station, this is how we're going to be able to flex. Like to spend all those hours that I spent instead of creating this very clear, color-coded, blah, blah, blah. Instead of creating that, all right, here are sort of the very simple structures that are going to be highly flexible that will allow us to do what you just said, which is to live in that moment and be able to respond and adapt to what we should have expected. Remember, you and I were in a graduate course together where the whole course was about foreseeability.
Yeah.
And it's like, if it's foreseeable, it's on you.
Yeah, that's right.
And every bit of the variability and chaos that happened on Friday was foreseeable. So it's on me. You know what I mean?
Well, and one of the things I'll say is, if you had sat down with me or any one of our colleagues and said, I just want to talk through the plan that I've got laid out here, right? Instead of like having to do it all yourself. How many times are we with an organization or with a health department or public health professionals doing planning, and they have this very complex thing that they want to create, and we start poking it and asking questions and play the what if game, right?
Yeah.
And it very quickly sort of falls apart, and it becomes very obvious exactly what you're saying it needs to be true, is that we've got to create something that, given a lot of pressure or changes in any one of these externalities,
that's right,
this has got to shift, right?
Right.
So if you're creating something, highly technical solutions to these sorts of things very often fall short. And we know that. We've said that. You've said that from the stage.
I've known this, and I'm usually the person telling people. And this time, I just thought that I could out-clever chaos.
We do this all the time. We talk about scenario planning sometimes with organizations, because they want to create something very technical, and then they say, also, let's create alternate scenarios. So if any one of these small things change and this falls apart, we've got a backup plan.
Yeah.
And that often is just as problematic, because you just end up with multiple technical plans that are trying to account for complexity that is way larger than any of the technical plans you could create.
So my plan was bad because there were foreseeable chaos elements that it's not that you can't respond to that. The way to respond to that I know and I just didn't do was you create simple structures that are highly, highly flexible. And that way, when that chaos comes up against them, okay, we don't break because we just bend in the wind, and we have pretty good idea of not exactly where we're going to go, but just really easy flex options.
Right.
That would have worked.
That would have worked. And you know that. So you've made a couple of mistakes. One is you knew better. So that's one.
I knew better.
The second one is you didn't ask anybody who could have given you a better perspective. So that's two, right?
Well, that's not exactly true. So one of the things that happened was that I was so confident in this plan that when I show it, like if I showed you this plan, you'd have been like, wow, all right. Like you have thought through this. Cause guess what? I had thought through a version of what would happen on that day. And so I did. I showed it to people and they're like, wow, that's amazing. Yeah, we'll color code. Wow, this is going to guide everybody through. Here's where you're right, though. And this is reason now, one of those color coded things is in my office. This is a memorial to my folly. And by the words that say, you are not good enough to do this by yourself. And what I mean by that, and what this event really taught me, and as a leader, is I wanted to make the day go so smoothly for everybody that they wouldn't really have to think, that they would be able to just connect to the kids and just literally follow colors around. And the truth is that day, there's no version of that day where our volunteers could only do that. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing, man. They proved, because I gave them a really terrible plan and they still were amazing, that I never should have assumed that that's what they needed. That our colleagues are just wickedly bright and motivated and compassionate and creative. Lean into that. Create some very simple, robust to uncertainty structures. And don't think that you've got to think for everybody else, because they are going to be good. If you've got the people that you need on your team, and for sure we do. And now I'm talking about hundreds of people. They were amazing, and I should have planned for their amazingness instead of planning for this to be at the most least common denominator level. I should have assumed that they could flex, be creative, solve problems, and put them into positions where they could just do that. I definitely did put them into positions where they had to be creative and solve problems, but I didn't really create a structure that really empowered them to do that. I just sort of said, oops, my plan didn't work. Can you figure this out? And they sure as heck did.
And they did.
So kudos to all of them. Yeah. But as a leader, you're never going to be, if it's complex, if it's simple, sure. If it's running a drive-through, you could probably figure it out. You could think for everybody else. But the truth is, anything that's complex, and surely the work of in communities, public health, the stuff we're doing, it's almost always going to be too complex for you to do the thinking for the whole team.
That's exactly
right. To recognize that the team is going to have to be amazing too.
Yeah, no, and that's absolutely true. And let me extend that. That includes the community. And so what I want to say to you is, yes, you showed it to some colleagues or some folks that work with us. If you had shown that plan to one of the teachers that were going to be on that bus or any of those buses, I think there's a possibility that sort of tacit knowledge would have emerged and said, I don't think this is going to work. And they might not be able to tell you exactly why all of it's not going to work, but they're probably going to look at it and go, do you know what you're dealing with here in terms of predictability?
Well,
And so that's probably a good reminder to us as well that, because I live in this community doesn't mean that I understand everything and every experience of everyone in this community.
Yeah.
And so when we're thinking about how to best serve, we should not make the assumption necessarily just because we have some of the same lived experience.
Right. And again, I just keep going back to one of the things. There are two big things I think that anybody who wasn't a part of this day could learn from my mistakes. Is one, if you're talking about complex tasks, then figure out what the essential features are to plan out, and then try to create supports for the problem solving that will be robust to uncertainty. And then the second thing is to trust your people.
Yeah.
Figure out how to plan in ways that maximize the value of the people that you're surrounded by. And I just did it. I just did not do that. I did not maximize the value of all of the intellectual and compassionate folks. I did not bring that to full force. And I tried to think for everybody else. And
that
if you've surrounded yourself with amazing people who are highly capable, then even the plan that goes to heck in a handbasket, it can still be okay. But I also want to point out that everybody there was leaning into a mission that they believed in at their core.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And I think that brings energy and brings problem-solving skills and brings a tolerance, really, for that chaos in some ways that maybe other things wouldn't. If we were making widgets or we were doing something that just didn't feel as important to us at our core, I wonder if you would have had the same, even if people highly respect you, think you're really good.
Most of the videos on my channel were about lead magnets, and I'm also going to print out this bit of paper and get people into the ecosystem with a good lead magnets, and I'm also going to print out this bit of paper and get people into the ecosystem with a good lead magnet. Once people get that, I actually send them the visual, which is that, and then I follow up with emails over, I think.
You do. And so I think that's part of it also.
I think you're hitting on something crucially important. And you know, if I did anything right that day, I think the night before I had a chance to address all of the volunteers. And I just focused it. I mean, I had my son there, I had some of the school folks there, and it was just centering on the mission. I mean, theoretically, I also oriented them to the color-coded schedule. I could have saved that half an
people
hour.
have where we can create a lead magnet for
But
it.
what
For instance,
really, I mean, I don't think many people, that was their takeaway. Their takeaway was the why. Like they felt that, and maybe they didn't need me to do that, but I definitely think that we centered the start of this. Like, here's your preparation for the day. Most importantly, your day is about connection on these things that really matter. And that ended up happening. And that's what saved my bacon. So my son is a part of the special ed programs in these schools. He had an incredible weekend where we did all kinds of things. But his Friday was the field trip to come do this. Because this is these kids' field trip. You imagine a field trip that is you getting clinical encounters and some bald-headed dude didn't even plan it well. But he's walking in his school. I'm walking with him into his school on Monday morning, and he turns to me unprompted and goes, "Dad, man, I love that field trip on Friday."
Yeah.
It's because of his buddy and the incredible people that we work with running these stations. Like, I didn't matter because they were so good. And why were they so good? I think part of it has to do with what you're saying. The mission was embodied, and they felt it and connected to it. So failure was not an option for them, even if I did a really terrible job planning it.
Yeah, no, that's right. You know, we know this is true. Because when we work with organizations, when we work with public health organizations, the very first thing we do is talk about your noble purpose. It is about centering you in your mission and achieving that vision, and it not being just words on a paper, it being actually embodied. And we take it a step further, and we facilitate a process whereby we ask folks to literally render their connection, the work that they do to this noble purpose, right? And when we do that, it creates this tone and this trajectory throughout a process of planning, hopefully not linear thinking, but planning that results in such engagement. And, you know, that's essentially what we're talking about here, is that along this path, we had messages from the deans of the colleges. We had messages from you. We all got to, you know, meet with our volunteers if we were leading a group and have that sort of experience. And I cannot stress enough to any leader out there, whether you're in public health or anything else, that if you can truly help your team see themselves in the story of the work that they do, chaos be damned, you'll be successful.
Yeah,
you can make it work.
I think there's a whole lot of truth to that. It's not that the plans don't matter, but that motivation, we talk about being robust to uncertainty, that motivation and that connection to this invigorating mission, that in and of itself is robust to uncertainty.
That is
and that's really what you're highlighting there, Matt. Yeah. I think you're so right. Yeah. Well, my friends, listeners, hopefully you learn from my mistake. And if you, as a listener, were one of those volunteers in our building, my gratitude for you cannot be expressed enough. I am so grateful for your brilliance in the midst of my foolishness. So thank you for saving that day and making it so wonderful. Even for me, like halfway through that, I was just feeling like lost and terrible. And then I just started recognizing that it had been fixed by the people I was working with. And it was a magical day. It really was.
That's awesome.
Wes,
well, it
you
reminds
teased
me.
something a second ago.
I did tease something a second ago.
I got to hear this. So is this a detour we're taking?
Well, it's definitely a detour. I don't recommend taking this detour. This is definitely a turn you don't want to take. Okay.
All right. So our first version of this is a detour you don't want to take. So Wes, you teased us with the idea that if you are going to, as people undoubtedly will, pack hundreds of boxes with peppers, with hot peppers, you should wear gloves. What have you learned the hard way this weekend?
You should definitely wear gloves. And if you don't, you will regret it the very first time you go to the restroom. I promise you. I promise you.
That was that sound that I heard on Friday afternoon.
It may have been, yes.
All the way from 30 miles away.
Yeah. And let me be clear about something. No matter how much soap or hot water you use on your hands, you will not get that pepper stuff off of there. So I do not recommend that detour at all.
That is the detour you don't want to take.
That's exactly right.
Well, my friends, appreciate you coming along with us on this journey of folly. All the mistakes we made on a beautiful, wonderful weekend of service with our colleagues and our students.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you up the road.